Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Shovel Knight King of Cards. In the last part we continued to the second chunk of the map, and now we're in our next Lost City themed stage, and this is the one that deals with the good old green bouncy blocks that effectively are going to replace dirt blocks. You actually don't do too much with the green balls of goop you can use to turn lava into bouncy stuff like this in this campaign. Largely the biggest way you use it is to change the Blaz Orb into just a normal blue orb for that one duel of Justice over at the Cave of Justice. In that regard, it is interesting. There is usually at least one mechanic per stage that kind of just leave on the table for some reason. Not that I'm complaining too much, because I think 4 stages per aesthetic would have been too much, and some of them are ones I can see it being a little hard to focus on entirely. Hell, I can tell you for a fact, if they had made a level entirely around the flashing on and off darkness mechanic found in the Let's Yard and the other campaigns, I would have been upset, because that's already my least favorite part of that. It was stages to begin with. And darkness platforming, as I've talked about before on the channel, is effectively my least favorite platforming type, period. Also, based on that, I'm sorry if I sound a little bit weird right now. I literally just woke up today, so if my commentary is a little weird in this video for a couple minutes at a time, that's probably why. Past a certain point, it'll probably stop, because I'll have to record more after my shift, but hey, that's life, you know? Another thing this level specifically focuses on a lot, especially when going for one of the merit medals, is the bonefish enemies that jump out of the lava. You can shoulder charge into them to begin with, yeah, but you can actively pogo off of them without destroying them, and you're going to want to do some pogo chains across some chains of them, especially in this little subsection coming up here. With that said, as soon as you get the pogoing started on the twirl with them, you never need to worry too much about timing from there. As long as you hold the direction you need to go, you're going to bounce across all of them no problem. Because their spawning is actively based on the scrolling of the screen rather than any individual timing. I think they could have done some interesting, if slightly annoying, sections where you had to actually wait for a specific time and go at the last second, but I think the reasoning there might have been, in the case you were even slightly off, the bounce of the twirl may have completely thrown that timing off and been kind of a pain in the ass, and if that was the case, I think they did make ultimately the right choice by keeping it the way it has been. Mind you, in general across the campaigns, they never really change the rules for how enemies will behave. In the case they do, they just make an entirely new sub-variant that's a different color and all that, like they did with the Wisms back in that one Pridemore Keep stage and things like that. Or they just add new enemies to begin with, which I think is ultimately usually the best option and things like that. Alright, so the next major section of platforming here is scrolling platforms that move up and down the lava. You can tell what's safe to stand on by its color. If it's slightly orange, it dips down beneath the surface and thus will be instant kill, but if it's that yellowish brown, you are completely safe to stand on it. Lost City has always been kind of a split level for me across the campaigns, because I really like platforming like this or the green goop platforms, but I've always really hated the Botos. To the point where I want to say when I was going for the Platinum Trophy, Lost City wasn't my highest restart count level, going for New Game Plus, Deathless, and breaking all checkpoints. I think that was ultimately the boss rush stage there. But I think Lost City for the Botos alone, because I was getting impatient, was up there. Or was that for the speedrun trophy I was working on? It might have been that one. I think I went into the speedrun trophy after doing New Game Plus 100% Deathless. And that was a nightmare. I wouldn't recommend it. This level's fine, though. Helps that it also knows when to end, which I really do appreciate about a lot of King Knight stages, is that they are... when they reach usually the peak of what they're doing with that specific mechanic without bringing other mechanics in, they usually just end. A benediction is then chanted, which beckons fortune to smile upon the new monarch, and that's how it's done. I never dreamed a coronation could be so complex. My boy certainly has a lot to learn about being a king. Your son is full of potential. My task as a ruler is to ensure he can flourish in safety and comfort. Heavens, what they say is true. You're as noble as you are dashing. I shouldn't say that. My dear, perish the thought. My nobility can be a curse. While I am a king, I desire most to be a man. Ah, there you are. Impeccable timing. King Primal was just saying we're approaching the Truple Pond. Yes, the pond, yes, of course. The Truple Pond. We were just a word, if you would, my boy. Some advice. Heed it well if you seek victory. The Truple King is far less tolerant of disrespect than I. Listen to King Pridemore, darling. Thanks to him, we're drawing close to the Truple King. My gratitude for the support, milady. Your mother and I are together as one in this matter. What do you mean you're together as one? Mother, what does he mean? Stay away from him. Let's hold steady and keep our heading straight. Remember, be respectful to the second Joustus judge. Ooh, and we've cleared 60 merit medals, so it's time for our next limerick. What do you got to say this time, good old bard? Him. In a sorrowful pit in the core of the shale, with deep golden inlays hewn into their mail, lest the recent good fortune collapse in a heap, the merchant militia marched on in their sleep. I don't know if he selects which one you haven't heard yet based on which level you just cleared, or if it's just set ones. Largely, though, he'll always say something pretty relevant to what you were doing at the least. I believe this is our 10th heart, so at this point we're maxed out on our health from Mom. The only thing we can get from her now is the other pies that give you vigor, but I'd recommend saving some merit medals coming up as we're nearing the end of this chunk, and the next sub-weapon is relatively early in the chunk of map after this. With that said, we still got plenty of levels to clear here, as you can tell. In fact, they're mostly themed around one thing. And we've got a wandering treasure knight to go deal with, so let's go take care of him first. Down into the fiery abyss. Wee sploosh. Ooh, somebody didn't read the no diving sign and you broke the last hot tub during my only break. Puh, it's beneath my royal rank to read rules, commoner. I prefer to speak and be obeyed. Down here, I'm the foreman and I make the rules, and the rules are posted for a reason. In my caves, when you act high and mighty, you get brought down to earth. Treasure Knight's pattern is actively pretty easy for King Knight to deal with, only because Treasure Knight relies very heavily on trying to ram into you directly during especially the sweeping attack, leaving him very open for shoulder charges and rolls through him, especially blast rolls to take upwards of half his health very quickly. When he hides into the dirt mounds, it can be kind of hard to reach him in time, though, because I feel like King Knight also waltzes a little bit slower in that regard. The one armor you can get that actively allows you to run faster by holding a certain button can be very useful here, but as you can see, if you just get him in a corner as well, you can really just drain through his health. And with that, we can also now go duel him in Joustus, and I still remember being surprised when I first played him that he actively doesn't use the rocks as a part of his field in Joustus. His deck is still very bomb-themed, don't get me wrong, so he's very focused on trying to destroy whatever cards you place down by placing cards then boosting into them. But you don't have to worry too much about rocks here. Wish I was back at the dig site. I loathe being aboard this expensive novelty, and I don't have time for games. Well, maybe one. Our main tile's only being 2x3 grid, and a lot of bomb blocks means there's going to be a lot of very quick pushing happens, but because of this, not only are you very likely to have to destroy your own cards while pushing into him, but there's also a good chance you'll just have a good opportunity to have him destroy his own cards, which is nice to take advantage of. That fight could have been a lot worse than it actively is, so I'm kind of surprised at that. Mind you, depending on how much money you're spending on mystery packs or what cards you're actively winning from opponents, around now is probably when you're starting to get a really good deck built up and you're getting used to the rules. So around now is where fights like that start to get a little bit easier to deal with. Either way, time for our next level. This is the Pressure Plant, our first Explodatorium themed level, so we're going to be seeing a lot of returns to old Plague Knight stage mechanics here. In fact, largely this stage is kind of focused on the barrels that bounce up and down their lids. Some of them have spikes and some don't, but we also have an entirely new mechanic here. Pipe pressure. There are going to be effectively beakers that have a cork at the end of them, and when you charge into a beaker, its cork will fly out. With that said, some have multiple corks, but also you need to figure out what direction and what order you need to actively hit the pipes in order to actually have the cork pop out. As the way that they place the level design, be it blocks in front of them or where the pipes curve, means there's only often one place you can actively hit the cork effectively. I like this stage a lot because I think it's the right level of action puzzle platforming for what King Knight can do. With that said, the Explodatorium can definitely be some chaotic stuff for King Knight in the long term, as there's a lot going on. You have to kind of look all across the screen in some cases compared to some other stage mechanics. I do appreciate a lot of things about Treasure Trove as a whole, but there's something I really appreciate about Spectre Knight and King Knight especially. It's because, since their level design is entirely unique, they actively also get some new mechanics like that that really play into their toolset specifically in a way I find satisfying. Because while reacting to the old stuff from Shovel of Hope and Plague of Shadows with them is still fun, But because of that, they can also kind of blend in. For instance, King Knight already has a lot more levels to begin with, so trying to remember specific ones can be rough. But whenever I think about this campaign, I usually think of levels like this that have a unique mechanic that only he has to deal with, instead of, oh, hey, the level where they use the falling platforms from the Lich Yard was really neat, which it is, but compare that to this, and it's like, yeah, that's night and day with what I feel is more interesting. Also, a few moments ago, I was talking about if you've been buying mystery packs and all that, you can have a really competent deck at this point. That's largely true to begin with, but I would recommend against buying mystery packs still for a little bit, because there's going to be another shop coming up in the relative near future that you're really going to want some gold to buy things from, because what is there is little in number, but big in price. I'm talking upwards of the 10k plus price range. And while technically speaking, that's actively only like revisiting certain levels like twice to get an alternate exit really quickly for grinding money. If you're trying to avoid doing that, you're going to want to save up what you can. Mind you, it helps at this point. In terms of what's on the Glidewing to begin with, I've already actively bought everything that's not just the random cards and all that from Chester, so it's very easy to think you're done with shops yet. You're not. There's one more. Just hold on to your money still. I like that last section a lot. I like that level a lot. I wish they did more of those pipes, honestly, because I think there's a lot of really cool stuff you could do with that, but oh well. Oh, and I see a little Plague Knight in there. Hello there, buddy.
Percy, I'm telling you, this location is too exposed. Your calculations cannot be correct.
Fear not, friend. Our secret laboratory lies beyond even the most eager eyes. I've made doubly sure.
Oh no, like I said, we're not alone. I can't be seen. Handle this, Percy, and don't blow it.
Prancing parabolas! How'd you get in here?
One would use the open door, would one not? Hey, speaking of a jar, is that a decanter behind you?
Don't look at that. This place is secret. You can't be here. But now Percy's on deck. It's my big moment. Hoof at you, eavesdropper. The truest of encounters. It's time to fight Percy himself, the NPC from Plague of Shadows. And he can be surprisingly rough because he's very projectile heavy. When he's not surprising you with a kick behind him when you're right next to him, he holds a bomb that goes off. He'll raise up in one of the platforms from Plague of Shadows that you use to enter the lab and just throw bombs at you countlessly when he falls down. Then he'll set up some of the sub-weapons from Plague of Shadows to actively try to be trap mines.
You made such a mess this time, Percy. But, as usual, I'll clean up after you.
You didn't think we were going to actually fight Plague Knight, did you? Plague Knight is largely about the same fight as he's been, but he actively will surprise you this time by not only bringing in his usual clones, but later on in the fight, he'll also spawn in Percy again to try and do extra attacks. Once you get a couple of hits in, he does actively start the auto-scrolling section with the cinder blocks only he can destroy and the beakers and all that. But as long as you're good about keeping the aggression up, this won't be too bad. With that said, because he's so range-based even compared to a lot of the other knights, Plague Knight, I'd argue, is one of the harder Wandering Traveler, Order of No Quarter members for Plague Knight, or for King Knight to fight. Keeping a good spam going, maybe even using the Duelist Glove here can go a long way, assuming you have the vigor for it, which, as you can see, I kind of ran out on. Oopsie. Of course, the main reason we're fighting all these traveling champions isn't just for the money involved, it's for the Joustus fights that they'll then spawn in. Worth noting, I think, technically speaking, an Order of No Quarter member or other traveling champion will stay at the table until you beat them, but after you beat them, anytime you return to the Glidewing, who will be there is random. Which means if you're looking for a specific character when trying to get all the cards, it can be a little bit tedious just to leave and exit again, but it doesn't take that long. Also worth noting, I believe Plague Knight himself will have different dialogue if you don't have Mona on the Glidewing yet. So at this point, I'm going after my next armor from King Pridemore. I go after the Rodent Regalia. That, I'd say, is probably a newcomer's best friend when it comes to all the armors, in that when you fall, a bunch of the rats will just spawn in and keep you from going into the bottomless pit. It doesn't keep you completely safe from the pit, as you still do take some damage because you gotta be punished somehow. But it is preferable, and for a newcomer, I'd say this is a pretty good armor because of that. Plus, it makes it so that you drop less gold upon death, too, so if you're really trying to save up some money and you're grinding and all that, honestly, a pretty good one to have around. Also upped my vigor with Mother, but for now it's time for me to get my Brigandine back on and go talk to Plague Knight upstairs for our next duel. And I know I've done this for a lot of duels, especially here in the Glidewing up to this point, but make sure you have a Gem Thief. Plague Knight's specific Joustus duel can be really tight because of how it uses rocks and bomb tiles on his cards to good effect. So having that last second save can go a long way.
Oh, Mona. Wait, what? Seriously, she's here? Should I go talk to her? I don't know. Regardless, I'd rather blow you up in justice and keep my hood clean.
The big thing with him is that he likes to hide most of his gems in stones. And while yes, that means you can get a lot of them pretty easily, it can lead to instances like this where you just get so many lost at one specific point in time, and it can lead to a very tight game. With that said, he actually doesn't have his own card. He mostly just has Percy because Mona has both her own and his card, kind of implying that Mona dueled him in Joustus and took his own card, which, yeah, that tracks for that character dynamic, honestly. Moving on, though, time for our next Explodatorium stage. This is Alchemical Aqueducts. This level, primarily to start, focuses on the water current mechanic we've seen in other versions of Plague Knight stage. When you're on that current at the bottom, you slowly get pushed along. However, they'll often hide things, especially pits in platforms, behind the current, so you need to be careful of that. With that said, you can use the shoulder charge to pretty good effect to help resist the current, but you are still obviously hindered by it. Doing mid-air shoulder charges while over the platform is a pretty safe way to keep yourself out of that, though. When it comes to characters that can avoid that, though, I do believe Plague Knight had overall the best way around that, if only because, you know, he could effectively hover for a good bit using his bomb explosions to pretty good effect. Something else this level does a lot on its latter half, and especially in its alternate exit, is put blorbs in the dirt blocks you can break, which I think is meant to be a hazard, but actively, because of the twirling state from the shoulder charge, they actively just serve as an extra buffer between you and any potential instant death, so take advantage of it when you can. Speaking of which, time for us to access the alternate exit right here below the checkpoint. A moment ago, though, we saw the Jumblorb enemy. They are effectively a giant blorb that has a shield on one side. You can shoulder bash them in the back to do damage, but honestly, 9 times out of 10 they show up, which I don't even think they show up 10 times across the campaign. I just ignore them because it's not that they're worth the fight, or not that they're not worth the fight, it's just I want to get a move on more accurately, because usually they're out of the way enough that you never really need to worry about fighting them, as opposed to a lot of other enemies who are more directly in your path. This is the part of the alternate exit I don't like, though, because we got to worry about dealing with the fairies above a bottomless pit with ladders that are pretty much the exact spacing of a shoulder charge away from each other. As long as you shoulder charge and then start immediately holding up, you'll grab onto the next ladder, no problem, but this can definitely still feel a little bit scary, even if it is relatively straightforward. I recommend having the frog bubble, or the bubble frog rather, on at all times, just in case you start slipping up a little bit, and it'll also give you a way to kind of ignore the last few ladders as you just kind of coast into the exit ring on this alternate exit. The level of tension that you can feel in your hands in a moment like that is usually higher than the actual danger is, I think is a good way to put it, and I've experienced that quite regularly across my decades, plural, of playing video games at this point. Getting that alternate exit allows us to access the card chest for this area, where we're going to get a couple of mystery cards as well as the usual set card from someone here. Hello, Gold One. How are you? Are you here foraging apples too? If so, beware the giant fish. We pilfer them against his wish.
Oh, we're rhyming now, are we? I'm neither here to snack nor snatch. I dare say he's met a match. No fish or fruit shall stem my tide, for I am King Knight. Step aside.
Trust me, pal, you don't want to anger an immortal ancient like the Truthful King. He looks like this. And doing that gets us the Truthful King's card, which is alright. Kind of weird that you get 2 Slam Kings in a row, effectively, between both him and King Priamore, but it's nice to have the extra directions in case you want that in your deck. At this point, I do still have some of the starter cards in my deck, but they're more there as fodder to either get into a gem quickly or to bait out a move from an opponent in some cases. Mind you, not that they always fall for the baiting. At times, they'll actively completely ignore it. Now, it is kind of rare, depending on what cards you've been selecting from victories over opponents, how many mystery packs you've gotten. But it does hurt a little bit when you get a mystery pack in one of these card chests and you get a duplicate card, only because the chances are so low. But prepare for it to happen at least once. Like that. I mean, at the same time, it's nice to have duplicates of some cards because they might be good enough to have multiples of in a deck. Like, a Mimic honestly isn't a bad one to have more than one of. But if you're going for all the cards, getting the duplicate from a freebie is a little bit painful. Back at the route split, though, it's time for us to go for this level's main exit, which deals a lot more with the water, as we saw earlier in the level. In the latter half of this specific route, the gimmick changes from being the water currents into being platforms that move left and right. It kind of reminds me of certain parts of classic Mega Man stages, where you just need to time your jumps from one to the next. This is a case where the Brigandine's vertical shoulder charge can come in handy if you're trying to dash straight up, but I just don't take advantage of it. For one thing, because the next merit medal's over here, but also because I am always slightly worried I'll just be too early or too late and thus just bonk off the bottom of the platform or completely miss it. But hey, if you want to take good advantage of it, not a bad place for it. In fact, I think this is also not a bad place to use the scepter, technically, because you might be able to dash from a platform all the way over here to get over to the right side near the ladder in a pretty swift motion. Additionally, and I think I end up doing so after a quick jump cut when I fall coming up here, the Fire Saber sub-weapon we got earlier can come in really handy in this level, as it allows you to get onto some platforms potentially a little bit early, or to at least bypass enemies that try to charge into you like that Jumblord did right there. That's a sub-weapon you really shouldn't sleep on when it comes to its platforming utility, because it can just completely surprise you with what it allows you to get done. Especially if you use it with some combos after, like, shoulder charging into a wall and then spinning off an enemy off from there. You can get some really good height and distance really quickly. And if you follow it up potentially afterwards after you land with a Bubble Frog or a Scepter attack, you can probably get some really good distance really quick. Mind you, not that there's many opportunities for you to do that super easily, considering that requires a lot of flat ground potentially, and that gets a little bit rare towards the latter half of this campaign, honestly. But with that, I'm gonna need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 9, we're gonna continue on, I believe, even finish off this chunk of the game's map. See you guys then.